Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show, where we celebrate every single day the people who are working so hard to make this place so special, such a special place to live, work, and play. I want to thank you for joining us on SuperTalk or on Facebook or YouTube or your favorite podcast or on SuperTalk TV. We really appreciate you joining us as we celebrate here on this show. A couple of quotes real quick. I noticed in my history book this morning that Vincent van Gogh died back in 1890. I love art. I have a long list of different kinds of art that I enjoy. Of course, as you know, if you're a regular listener, you know that I love music. I was a drummer starting in 5th grade, and I guess once a drummer, always a drummer, but I love music, a wide variety of music. But Vincent van Gogh once said this, that there is nothing more truly artistic than to love people. There's nothing more truly artistic than to love people. I cannot agree more. I love people. That's one of the reasons I do this show, to celebrate people and to create, I think, conversations that enable you to be inspired by people who care deeply about people. And I think there's something magnetic about that there's a snowball that rolls from those conversations, and we never know where they're going to take us. Listen, one of the most special people on earth is my sister Mitzi. She's married to Mac Harper, and they're just incredible people. And as my mother, who died recently, approached the end, I said of Mitzi and Mac that they were literally angels on earth, the way that they helped my family work with my mother. I was lucky in that my mother was bright-minded all the way to the end. She was very aware of everything. In fact, that's one of the reasons that made it so sad for me, because she wanted to live. Just a few days before she died, she looked around at my grandkids and she said, "That's the reason I want to live. There's more things to see in life. There's more memories to make." But Mitzi and Mac were just incredible. But Mitzi actually posted this on Facebook, and I thought this was beautiful. She said, "I hope beautiful things happen to you. And when they do, I hope you can believe you are worthy of every single one of them." Isn't that something? That's very special. I think a lot of people, they're moving through life so fast, sometimes they wonder if they're worthy. I think everyone is worthy. But I say on this show all the time that you never know what someone's going through. You never know. Someone can seem so solid in their world, in your world, but inside something may be torturing them, or they may be having some difficulties. And I think in the social media world, we're too often, too quick, we're willing to say something to someone that we would never say to them to their face. And anyway, I hope beautiful things happen to you. And when they do, I hope you can believe you are worthy of every single one of them. F.E. Marie is the one who said that. Hey, listen, this is I'm looking back now at Election Day, and man, I'm so glad to see especially the lieutenant governor's race behind us. That was so nasty. My goodness, man. A lot's going to be written about how nasty it was. The fact that so much dark money came flowing into Mississippi. I can't wait for our legislature to stop that. You know, $1 million plus of dark money coming into the state, trying to influence that election. And man, what it did to get people worked up and what people were willing to say to each other on social media. Man, I'm glad that one's behind us. And I know that Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann is now the Republican nominee, is going to move forward in a way that's going to help bring us together. I'm confident about that. Okay, so yesterday I had this incredible conversation, hour-long conversation with the mayor of Biloxi, Fofo Gillis. We went through a lot of issues. I value my friendship with Fofo. I've known him for many, many, many years prior to him becoming the mayor of Biloxi. I know him to be a passionate, very, very smart leader who is burning the midnight oil on behalf of this city. And if you missed that conversation, I'd really encourage you to go take a look at it. We talked about everything from the insurance crisis to how hot it is outside to the Tidelands dispute to hurricane season and many points in between. But it was a terrific conversation. And with that said, I am thrilled to have now the chief of police from the Biloxi Police Department, Chief John Miller, my friend, someone who's been on the show many times and someone I have deep respect for and have talked about on the show many times. John, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll tell you, coming back to Fofo for a second, no one will say of Fofo that he let the grass grow on him, will they?
They will not. That is a busy man.
Yeah, I tell you, one of the most, and I really often refer to people to go back and look at this. You can do a search on Facebook or YouTube and just say, I think at the time it was under Coast View, but I think it actually will come up with the Ricky Matthews Show. But it's the first conversation I had with Fofo when before we had our conversation, I said, do you mind if I get into your mind a little bit during this conversation? And he said, sure. He trusted me to be able to do that. But I wanted to explore the way he thinks because, as you know, he's a really, really smart guy. He comes from the software development business, has a degree in mathematics, and his mind is thinking way faster than his speech pattern. He can't keep up with his mind. So when people see that speech pattern, they don't know what to make of it, and some might think something less of him. But what they need to understand about him is that he's many steps ahead of most of us in his thinking, and he is passionate about this city. He cares deeply about this city, and when you go to something like the Croatian golf tournament fundraiser every year in a room of 1,000 people, and you walk through it and see him remembering the names of every single person in the room, you then understand the power of that brain. But he's got to be fun to work with.
He is fun to work with. He's a great guy. He's always very supportive. When you and you described it, when you combine intelligence and energy, that's what you come up with. And he's always Johnny on the spot. He's always thinking ahead.
Yeah, he really is. Hey, so Chief, how you been, my friend?
I've been very well, very well.
I had the DA of Harrison County, Stone, and Hancock on recently, and I've had others on. We've talked about a wide variety of issues, including the important role the Boys and Girls Club plays in the community. But what's interesting? There's a common thread to a lot of the conversations I'm having recently, and that is that we better work harder to keep our young people busy. We better find mentors for our young people, because if we don't do that, they're going to find mentors. And oftentimes those mentors are going to be on social media or somewhere, and they're not going to be the best mentors. That's got to be something you think about almost every day.
Social media in the law enforcement world can be our best friend. It can also be our enemy. And I think the conversation everywhere now is about the amount of time that you spend on social media. It cannot be healthy. We know that it's not. And you're absolutely right. The mentors that they're picking up on social media are not monitored. I think a lot of parents don't realize that. I think if they knew that, they would try to change that a little bit. But we see that now. Social media has been around for a good while now. We see that in our hiring practices now. We're hiring young people into this business now, into the law enforcement business, that good people. Some are coming with advanced degrees, very intelligent, but man, they are lacking in social skills. And honestly, I think we can trace that back to the amount of social media and the lack of getting out and actually talking to folks that they're doing.
Yeah, I see that so clearly, buddy. There are a lot of studies out now about this, and I hope Congress one day will open up. I mean, I know that in some respects the cat the cat is out of the barn, and we're going to have to deal with it. But to some respects, I think there's more we can do to protect young teens, who, especially young women who are being shamed and bullied, and too many of them are self-hurt. Too many of them are committing suicide. There's a real problem there. The issue around, if you look at young people who are involved in violence, and you look to inside their homes, sometimes you don't find someone there to provide them the kind of guidance they need. And so this is the point that you're making, that you get influenced by that. The issue of social media as it relates to the specific point that you made, and that is that we're not having to face people to their face and learn social skills, real social skills. When you're on social media, you're willing to say things and do things you would not necessarily do if you were dealing with someone in person. And developmentally, this is actually really important.
It really is. And again, we see it. We see it on the front lines here. Again, intelligent young people, but they just absolutely have no social skills and don't understand the concept.
Yeah.
In this business, you have to have social skills. You have to be able to talk to people, whether it's as a police officer or whether it's working the front desk or dispatch, you have to be able to talk to people and understand it.
Yeah.
And we're finding more and more that we're having to try to teach some social skills before we can actually teach them the job.
Boy, training new policemen. We're going to talk about that in our conversation. But when we come back, we'll come back with Chief John Miller and just continue the conversation. He's from the Biloxi Police Department. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show. And I love long-form interviews. And as I consider sort of where we are in the conversation with Chief John Miller from Biloxi Police Department, it hits me that we should have booked him for a full hour because there's so much to talk about. Coming back to the role that social media plays in the world that you're dealing with, whether it be social skills of policemen and the training requirements that happen there, or whether it be the influence on young people, et cetera, where it really manifested itself more recently was in the spring break activities, where you don't have a central promoter. We've been through this on the show before, who can one promoter, like the promoter at the Coliseum, potentially is a person that could be someone who's working hard to try to coordinate, et cetera. But you got all these other informal promoters, and then you have social media influencers that could just simply say something like, "Hey, show up at the beach at this place," and suddenly you have 1,000 people there that you didn't expect to have there, and there's really no accountability to the person that brought them there, and now it just falls on you and the people who have come in from out of the city of Biloxi to assist you to kind of deal with the situation. It is dangerous today, isn't it?
Oh, it really is. The obligation we have to our community, whether it be folks that live here or folks that come here, to have a good time, is safety. I mean, that's our business, is to keep people safe. And it's hard to do that when there's just we'll just call it a flash mob that shows up at a particular place. We have so many policemen to do their daily jobs, just limited what we have. And so if we can't have, a day or two to prepare and have policemen on duty for these events like this, it is very dangerous. Now, the majority of people don't cause problems. And we know this, that there's always a small segment that causes those problems. But that's all it takes. One bad player or two bad players in a huge crowd. And we've seen what that can do. They can cause a lot of damage, a lot of injury. We just need time to be able to focus on what's happening. We need to know ahead of time that we're going to have this event, so that we can make the community safe and the people that are coming safe.
And John, I've said this on the show many times. It's as much for the people who are participating in these events, who have every intention of following the law and just having a good time as they take a break and they want to enjoy the beautiful Gulf Coast, et cetera. That image of the young man with the gun in his hand on Highway 90, just firing, without any regard for where the bullets are going to hit and who might get injured or killed. That's what we're dealing with today, man. And it's hard to watch the video to begin with, but then when you start to contemplate, how do you stop this? It even gets more complicated, doesn't it?
It really does. There's only a few things that we can do to try to control that, and being able to control a large event. I mean, that's where it's at. A lot of folks just think that, the police are there and they're giving everybody a hard time. But we're usually several steps beyond that. We're looking at not only what the dangers are about, having a party on U.S. Highway 90. A lot of people forget that's a U.S. highway. It's going to be busy. But also the unforeseen problems that could arise, or dangers that could arise. Most people don't think about those,
Yeah.
And that's what we have to think about. That's what we're paid to think about, and that's where we try to send all of our resources. To place our resources in places that we know are going to keep the community safe, without knowing ahead of time that you're going to have a large crowd. That's just almost impossible.
Hey, John. My compliments to you and your team and to the mayor. I've said all this on the show before. The city council, on the Tuesday following the event, you guys all came together, and I think everyone was basically loaded to bear. They wanted to begin the process to try to figure out what ordinances, if any, could be enacted to help us. We're in a public comment period now around some of the possibilities related to that. You came up there. You had already received a call from, I think, the police chief of Miami. They had serious issues down in South Beach this year, and I had experience for newspapers in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and of course here. And I've seen what other communities had to do to wrestle with this, like in Orange Beach and Gulf Shores. But I was very complimentary of you on the show. The way you came loaded with facts, best practices. The way to solve problems is not just rebuild the wheel; it's to go look at what other people have done, and try to figure out how we can learn from their experiences. And you were ready at that meeting, but that's just the way you operate, isn't it?
Well, you're absolutely right. Not to have a good understanding of what you're trying to do, and that good understanding comes with facts. And like you said, not reinventing the wheel. It's always best practice to look and see what's there, what's been done. A lot of times it opens your eyes to a few things, and a majority of the time you're going to find things that you didn't think about that somebody else has thought about, and vice versa. I know that there are people watching to see what kind of ordinances we're going to end up implementing. And I'm sure that some of those are going to be adapted other places.
Yeah. I actually have said on the show, I hope, and I know that that Kenny Holloway and Billy Hughes and others are paying attention to it. But I think it's going to be a problem for us if we implement something in Biloxi and we don't implement something similar in other communities, because as you have learned, as we all have learned, that these flash mobs, or whatever you want to call them, these uncoordinated promoters will find the weakness in the ordinances, and that's where they'll start to gather again. And Coast of Mississippi needs a one-coast approach to this problem, don't they?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I believe that. Yes. I think it's incumbent on the coast to keep people safe, like we said earlier. And sometimes you have to implement things that, it may restrict some things when you do that. But let's face it, safety is what we're worried about.
Yeah.
And we live in a world now where you really don't know what to expect next, whether it's
incidentally
a school shooting or whatever.
No doubt. It's really unfortunate that when we celebrate at my kids' school, where 4 of my grandkids go to elementary and my daughter teaches, we celebrate having an armed guard. That's sad. Listen, how's the patrolman who was shot? How is he doing in his recovery?
Yeah, he's doing very well. He still doesn't have the use of that arm, or we're still waiting to see, what restrictions he's going to have in that arm. A great officer. I mean, he's taken this in stride. He's not letting it get him down. He's our chaplain, by the way. He's actually our department chaplain. He had retired, and in the state retirement system, once you retire, you have to sit out 90 days before you can come back and volunteer or come back as a part-time officer. And so he had just finished his 90 days, and we had actually brought him back as a part-time officer. And he was not scheduled to work that day. He was one of the ones that got called in. So, it's just a tragedy all the way around. We're very fortunate that he's alive. We're very fortunate that everybody lived after that shooting. Very fortunate.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Hey, listen, one of the things that you and I have talked about in the past is this is not your father's or your grandfather's police department. Today, you have to be a constitutional lawyer. You have to be a psychologist. The requirements, the job requirements are significant. And so it's harder to find applicants that are qualified to do this job. And then they have to involve themselves in extensive training. How's it going?
Well, I think that we've picked up a little momentum in the last probably 2 to 3 months. It was very difficult to hire anybody up till that, like I said, 2 or 3 months ago. Still very difficult, but we are making some headway. It's a lot to do with the whole unfund the police and all that. Even though we have a lot of support, in the South here, especially along the coast for law enforcement, that still took a toll. And, you even had policemen, career policemen that, their dad was a policeman, they're a policeman, their son or daughter is going to be a policeman. You even had those cops, and I absolutely cannot blame them for trying to divert their kids another direction. And to me, that was just a shame. This has always been a family business, but I completely understand it.
Yeah.
What we're seeing now, we're having a few more people apply for us now, but we have really worked hard. Our recruitment team they hit all the job fairs they could hit. They're probably hitting a couple of dozen or more a year. The city has 2 job fairs of its own that we're using. We're using social media, and then we're doing things now that we've never done before, just person to person. We have most of our command staff have a pocket full of cards. And if they're out having lunch and they're talking with somebody who's interested in being a policeman or a dispatcher, they're giving them a card. So we've been able to hire a lot of people that way. However, I'm going to go out on a limb because I think I'm pretty close here. About half of what we're trying to recruit now end up washing out, and they end up washing out either with a psychological evaluation or their background gets them. So it's very difficult. So we're spending a lot of time interviewing a lot of people and doing the backgrounds, and ended up with about half of those folks.
Yeah. Hey, listen, every time I see a policeman, I just wave at them. And when they come down my street, I think I've told you this before, I come running out the front door with a Gatorade or something because I can't. I bet a lot of people do that, man. We live in a community where that's important. But listen, Chief, we're out of time. I'll get you back. There's so much more to talk about. We'll get you rescheduled in the next week or two, and we'll continue the conversation because what you're talking about applies to everyone in coastal Mississippi. And I think I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with me.
Ricky, thank you. I appreciate you very much, and looking forward to coming back.
Yeah, you bet. This has been Chief John Miller from the Biloxi Police Department. Hey, when we come back, we're actually going to talk about films in Mississippi. You'll enjoy this conversation. We'll see you after this.